Right now on Denver 7 News, in the wake of the death of Elijah McClain, the city of Aurora banned first responders from using ketamine. We're learning more about the new alternative they could start using. Plus, as more students start the new school year, bus shortages are having some hitch a ride somewhere else.
Fortunately, we can't compete. And that's because we just don't have the funding that's needed.
What school districts are doing to make sure students get to school and back safely. And a Colorado teacher is looking for a fresh start after her family escaped the Marshall Fire.
You become a second home to these kids and an adult that they trust and look up to. That is something that is extremely special to me.
The life lessons she's bringing with her to the classroom. Thanks so much for joining us for Denver 7 News at 11. I'm Jason Grenauer. Nearly 3 years ago, Elijah McClain died shortly after he was injected with a high dose of ketamine, a powerful sedative. The city of Aurora banned its use and is now considering an alternative. Denver 7's Jessica Crawford joins us now. And Jessica, the city held a meeting this morning. You've been listening in. Can you break all this down for us?
Absolutely. So they discussed adding another type of sedative to their medical toolkit, and it's called droperidol. Dr. Eric Hill, a physician and EMS medical director at the Medical Center of Aurora, spoke about it at this morning's meeting. Droperidol is an antipsychotic, and it's a rapid sedative used in intensive care treatment and where a patient may be agitated or aggressive. Dr. Hill says it is used to calm the person, and so EMS can provide them with the help that they need. He said it would only be used on people who have no decision-making capacity at the time. While they have stopped the use of ketamine, Aurora EMS does use other sedatives. Dr. Hill says droperidol is very unique because it would be a better sedative for people who have been drinking or people who have brain injuries. It's also used by several other agencies, including Denver EMS. The idea of using anything to inject a person induced a really passionate response.
The goal of a sedative is not to render someone incapacitated. The goal of a sedative is to make a calming effect so that you can properly render aid to that patient safely.
I would like to see all of our firefighters and all of our police officers go home at night, every night, and until we know the outcome of the Elijah McClain trials. I don't know why we're talking about injecting anybody with anything.
We did look it up, and like any drug, droperidol does have side effects. Doctors say there are potential heart complications there. Emergency responders still have to evaluate the person's weight before administering the drug.
Our Jessica Crawford listening in. A very passionate response, as you mentioned, because obviously this community has been through a lot when it comes to the idea of the use of sedatives. Jessica, thank you so much. Well, moving on to the economy now this morning, the Producer Price Index, a key metric of inflation, shows prices, they're coming down. The index fell 0.5% from June to the lowest level since January. Now, gas prices are falling, and economists say cheaper diesel means cheaper shipping and eventually cheaper food. But economists also say it's too soon to know if we've really turned a corner on inflation.
It's not going to be a straight line, I'm sure. There's going to be ups and downs and all arounds, and there's going to be disappointments. But I do think we're going to feel a lot better about inflation, a year from now.
Even though we got this cooling, ongoing pressures on food prices and gasoline prices, those could come back at any time.
But the U.S. isn't there yet. Food prices went up between June and July, and overall, prices are still much higher than they were a year ago. We're also getting new details into just how well Colorado's economy is doing, especially when compared to other states. Now, CU Boulder's Leeds School of Business compiled this second quarter report. Our state added 104,000 jobs in 2022 so far. Our labor participation was the second highest in the nation. Colorado also ranks above average in other key performance indicators like GDP, income, and home price growth. But experts warn there are risks already impacting our nation's economy that could impact us locally, like the inflation rate, labor, and trade. Former President Donald Trump is facing several legal battles. In the latest, Trump sat down for a deposition with New York State's Attorney General, who is investigating alleged tax violations by Trump's companies. ABC's M. Wynn has the latest from Washington.
Former President Donald Trump facing legal scrutiny, sitting down for a videotaped deposition with New York Attorney General Letitia James that lasted 6 hours.
How do you feel, Mr. Trump? How do you feel?
James is conducting a civil investigation into the Trump Organization's business and tax practices. Trump refused to answer any questions but his name, invoking the Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. James is investigating whether the Trump family business was inflating and deflating the values of certain properties to get more favorable loans and avoid paying more taxes. Unlike in a criminal case, pleading the Fifth in a civil case can lead to the jury being permitted to draw a negative inference if the AG ultimately sues Trump. It's also something Trump has previously criticized his opponents for.
You see, the mob takes the Fifth. If you're innocent, why are you taking the Fifth Amendment?
In a statement, Trump claimed he had no choice. He and his company have denied wrongdoing. The deposition comes just days after the FBI raided Trump's home in Mar-a-Lago in an unrelated investigation. Sources telling ABC News authorities searched for documents, some classified, that the former president allegedly took improperly from the White House. Republicans now pressuring the FBI to explain why they carried out the raid.
We can't have a two-tiered system of justice in America.
But Trump himself could answer some of those questions if he released the warrant he has for the court-authorized search or the inventory of items taken from his home.
That would just say potentially what the crime was, what they were looking for, etc.
Trump is back in Bedminster, New Jersey, facing several other legal fights. This includes the DOJ's probe into the January 6th Capitol attack and a criminal investigation in Georgia of Trump's alleged efforts to pressure officials into overturning the state's 2020 election results. Em Nguyen, ABC News, Washington.
Let's talk back to school now. Many kids are coming back to school for the new year, and a lot of them take the bus. But staffing shortages are forcing some to find a new ride. To help with the issue, school districts across the state are offering things like a $1,000 signing bonus and competitive pay. But that isn't the case for the 27J school district.
Unfortunately, we can't compete, and that's because we just don't have the funding that's needed.
Officials at 27J say in order to be considered fully staffed in their bus driver department, they need at least another 20 bus drivers with non-CDL driver's licenses. The school district also says that they need another 21 paraprofessionals or bus monitors to support students on buses. The school district had similar issues last year. They tried canceling as few routes as possible and ended up pulling anyone with the proper license to drive a bus. And that's something district officials say they're planning for once again.
We have a number of people in our transportation department in addition to school bus drivers. We have mechanics, we have schedulers, we have office clerical staff. And on days when we are really short, those people put their tools away and they grab a bus route and they drive those routes.
Well, the first day of school means a fresh start and the hope for a good year. And one Brighton teacher is starting from scratch after losing everything in the Marshall fire last year. As Denver 7's Christian Lopez found out, one of her biggest lessons this year will be resilience.
The clock is ticking for students to return to Eagle Ridge Academy in Brighton. New teacher Mrs. Ambrose is getting ready for her first day of school. What is it that you love about teaching?
Well, the students themselves, right? Watching kids as they're beginning to learn things and really building those relationships because, you become a second home to these kids.
Natasha Ambrose is still learning to navigate losing her own home in Superior to the Marshall fire 7 months ago.
We lost everything, unfortunately. So we lived in the Sagamore neighborhood, which was the first neighborhood to be hit. We had no warning other than big billows of smoke.
Oh my God.
Her family counts themselves lucky. They were all home when the fire broke out and escaped with little more than the clothes on their backs.
When you have an entire life and you accumulate things, I could have easily gone to my basement and gotten pictures for the walls and, some little trinkets and things like that. And here I'm starting with nothing.
Now she's starting a classroom from scratch too.
The community has helped me a bit, but certainly that has been a struggle and a hardship for us.
Mrs. Ambrose will be teaching technology and business to some of the Eagle Ridge Warriors. Not only that, though, she also plans to incorporate some of the lessons she's learned through these hardships in her classroom as well.
It's my first year as a teacher, and I'm really trying to find ways to, yes, build those relationships with the kids and let them know who I am.
So what are you looking forward to the most this school year?
Getting to know all of the students. That's always the best part.
And she hopes to teach them an important lesson on resiliency.
I think that this experience has shaped who I am, and I would like for my students to help me rebuild this classroom and, maybe put themselves on these walls as well.
In Brighton, Christian Lopez, Denver 7.
Let's talk the Broncos, and right now, Broncos country taking advantage of their last day to see the Broncos out at training camp. The Dallas Cowboys are in town for a joint practice today. The two teams will then play a preseason game this Saturday at Empower Field. Our Denver 7 sports team will have the latest from training camp tonight, and the team naming a new president, Damani Leach, a former NFL executive. That's coming up tonight on Denver 7 News. Well, coming up on Denver 7 News at 11, are you still waiting on your Tabor check? Well, you're not alone, but now there's a way to make sure your check is coming to your mailbox. Plus, it's an event that requires strength and gumption, and it's all for a great cause.